Hello, Mr. Davis. Yes, I was. Especially growing up here in Rialto and moving to Fontana. Growing up right outside of Catawba, there was a lot of drugs in the neighborhood, a lot of drug dealers, a lot of drug violence. The guy who bullied me was one of the big homies. So he sold drugs, and his bigger cousin was a gang member and picked on some people in my family. So, yes. I think when I was younger, it would probably be uh, my grandma, maybe keeping me away from all that and keeping me in church. I think as I got older, I think it became sports that kept me away. I think if they found something that they liked, if they found something that they were interested in, if we built some classes or something after school that allowed them to find other things to do, other resources to do, maybe something that's bigger than the Boys and Girls Club, right? Similar to how we have Think Together or ethnic studies classes, I think that will kind of derive the path. Yes, because they're bored. Our students are bored, especially our students of color. They want something else to do, so if they don't have anything to do in class, they don't like their teachers, then they're going to go do what they want to do. And that's why we have fights.
Thank you.
Growing up, were you surrounded by any heavy gang activity or influences?
Yes, I was surrounded by a whole lot of gang activity and influences.
What prevented you from choosing the wrong path?
Honestly, personal story, my mom actually got shot with a gun. So that deterred me from having anything to do with gangs, guns, drugs, all of the above.
What could have prevented your friends or family from any gang activity?
Peer pressure. Peer pressure is probably the number one thing that kids go through here. Listening to other kids, even if they don't want to be a gangbanger, they be a gangbanger for their friends or family. So if they didn't have those influences, they probably would have been okay.
Do you think school has anything to do with kids being involved in gang activity?
I think school has a lot to do with it because it's social media these days, and the kids get on the social media and they bring it back to school, and then that's where the beefs become. So yes, I do.
Okay. Growing up, were you surrounded by any heavy gang activity or influences?
No, not really. I mean, a few of my cousins were in gangs, but that's pretty much it.
What prevented you from choosing the wrong path?
Honestly, I think my dad, or like, I've seen a lot of stuff in my family, like a lot of bad stuff in my family to know not to go that way. So I think that's what helped really, and just like trusting myself.
What could have prevented you or your friends from choosing the wrong path?
Honestly, I think if I mean, I tried to tell them, but like they never really listened to me anyways. So, but I think if I tried a little bit harder, they probably would have went the right way.
Do you think school has anything to do with kids being involved in gang activity?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like especially schools in like bad neighborhoods. Schools in bad neighborhoods, they definitely influence a lot on the younger people. Like you see freshmen like joining gangs, and it's really sad, honestly. So that's it. I think it plays a big role in doing that.
All right. Thank you.
Growing up, were you surrounded by any heavy gang activity or influences?
I don't know if I call it heavy, but like when I was in school, yeah, there's still a lot of gangs. I grew up in Rialto, so there's a lot of gangs out here. I wouldn't say if I was influenced by them or not. I didn't really associate with them too much.
What prevented you from choosing the wrong path?
Sports and my mom, really. Yeah, sports and my mom. Sports kept me out of a lot of trouble. The people that were in sports were people that you wanted to be around because you all had the same goals. And my mom, she would have beat me up if I'd have gotten into some gangs. So,
What could have prevented your friends or family from gang activity?
same thing. Extracurricular activities, like sports, clubs, different types of things like that. Their parents, their family members, and really your friends. You know, it's that saying where you show me who your friends are, I tell you who you are. It's kind of true. Who you hang out with is a big deal about the things that you do and the decisions that you make.
Do you think school has to do with anything with kids being involved in gang activity?
It definitely can. You know, I mean, we can't pretend like there aren't people that we see around that, you know, are affiliated with different things. So if you decide to hang around with those people, then people see that you're also going to be affiliated with that kind of stuff. So it definitely can. It all depends about decisions you make and who you hang out with.
Growing up, were you surrounded by any heavy gang activity or influences?
Yes, I grew up in Watts, South Central Los Angeles, right in the middle of the height of gang activity. All my friends were gang members, and everybody I hung out with was gang members.
What prevented you from choosing the wrong path?
I was in a household where I had both my parents, so my dad was a major influence on me stopping the gang activity.
What could have prevented your friends or family from gang activity?
Better mentoring programs. If they would have had somebody to guide them away from it, I think that would have helped them.
Do you think school has anything to do with kids being involved in gang activity?
I believe it does a little bit, but it doesn't play a big role. I believe just the neighborhood you grew up in, the schools do as much as they can to discourage kids from being in gangs.
Okay.
Yes, so I grew up in Lakewood, which is only a short drive away from Compton. And growing up, we did have skinheads, which had neo-Nazi affiliations. And there were times where where I grew up, I lived literally right next to my elementary school, but separating my school from me was a walkway. And they would tag, they would do all kinds of things, and I'll never forget my super pregnant mom going out there in the middle of the night yelling at them to be facing the school. And luckily I had a classmate whose father was a police officer for El Segundo who lived down the street. So we did our own kind of neighborhood watch where the parents would start patrolling, but we definitely had that. I also lived really close to Mayfair High School and Lakewood High School, which in the 90s, there was a lot of really not so great influences out that way. So I did grow up near that. I had really good supervision as a kid. I did have neighbors who were law enforcement, families who talked to each other. We didn't have cell phones. They couldn't text us and say, hey, get your butt home. Like, we had pagers when I was in junior high and high school, okay? So we were outdated, like Flintstone style. So there was a lot of supervision, and parents looked out for each other, parents knew each other. I feel like we don't have that today, so it was very, very different when I was growing up. So unfortunately for some of my friends, I moved to Corona 2000s, but my friends who stayed in that area, they got involved in drugs, a lot of them, because the high school was also a combined junior high. And it was such a huge school, there was not a ton of supervision. And as we got older, kids hung out, they went to the corner stores. As we got older, we kind of did what we wanted. And a couple of my friends got involved with upperclassmen who were doing drugs. And some of them did have gang affiliations. So I'd say just by circumstance, they got involved in that because the parental supervision somewhat disappeared. Yes. Because supervision and prevention and talking to each other about our mutual responsibilities as a society, sometimes the only time those conversations happen are at home or at school. We are like your second home because some kids come from families where there is gang activity and they don't know what they don't know. They just see it as the norm. So when they come to school and they have that safety net and they know that some of the behaviors that they've lived through aren't normal or not acceptable, they come to that realization of, oh my gosh, I need help, or I don't want to live this kind of lifestyle. So schools absolutely play a pivotal role in that.
Okay, thanks.
Growing up, were you surrounded by any heavy gang activity or influences?
Yes. Growing up, I grew up in an area that wasn't that great. So I did, yes.
What prevented you from choosing the wrong path?
I think it was just in me not to do it. I knew what was right and wrong, and I decided to do the right thing.
What could have prevented your friends or family from gang activity?
Maybe better opportunities, a new environment, education.
Do you think school has anything to do with kids being involved in gang activity?
Sometimes, because kids are together here in this community at school, and they very easily influence each other. So, yes.